Hello all my Kenvians and welcome to a brand new episode of Discovering Classic Doctor Who. In the previous episode I watched The Dead Planet and the Survivors, the first two parts of The Daleks, the introduction to the infamous villains from throughout the history of Doctor Who. And today I'm going to be watching The Escape, The Ambush, and The Expedition. Yes, of these 7 episodes, I'm going to be taking out a larger chunk with this episode, with those 3. So, the full version will be rather long, admittedly, unless that if there isn't a lot to react to. If there isn't much that occurs during the span of an episode, I may trim that episode short, even in the full version. It'll just kind of depend on how things go. Based on the first 2 episodes, though, I think this is going to be rather interesting, and I should have, plenty of material to react to, so I think we should be good. But it's hard to tell until we get to the end of this and until I actually do the editing. So please do keep that in mind. But let's begin and start with The Escape, which clearly they don't escape entirely because there's many more episodes. But let's go! And go! Hi.
You're not. You're perfect.
I tried to speak to you in the forest yesterday, but I frightened you.
I don't know that we call him perfect.
It's frightened. It was terrible.
Would you like some tea?
We have brought you. What is the last word here?
The last word.
So, son, stop that noise.
It's what I'm called. It's mine. Alright.
Yes.
This way then.
Yeah, do they actually... Okay, so they do kind of show... Alright then. Yeah. that was intriguing. Not super eventful, but I did like the end aspect there, what happened there at the end. So, let's go ahead and move on to The Ambush. Of course, I have to go through and fix the subtitles. I actually will edit this part out. Episode selection and The Ambush. Let's go.
I have just passed the prisoners through into lift chart 7. There are no orders to move the prisoners. Hold them.
Oh, crap.
The door is locked. Don't put me cannot do anything for it now, Thals.
Such an annoying sound effect.
It is nearly completed.
About bloody time.
It is empty. Lock the...
Someone down there. Look. By that sort of gateway thing beyond the low building. I saw someone cross that space.
The Dalek?
No. It was a man. A human being.
Or a Thal.
No! They come with food supplies.
Walking into an ambush. I get my fingers in. Sorry. Oh, yes. It's beginning to move.
And that's how Ian lost his fingers.
Doctor, keep working at the door. They are approaching.
Meh. Everybody hide and then come out and say, surprise!
Oh dear boy, now please come along.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Good link.
Daleks took it from me when they searched me. It's down there somewhere. In the city.
Oh, well, okay. That I can accept. The expedition. Alright, so I will say the episodes so far, they are a bit, what's the word? Things are going a bit slowly, but I am still enjoying the story overall. So let's get right into it with the expedition. And go.
You've lost it? You can't have.
No.
No.
The Daleks took it from me when they searched me.
Oh, heavens.
So there is something you...
Then we cannot delay. But what are we to do? Is this the end of the Daleks?
No.
We need radiation to survive. Exactly. We may have to explode another neutron bomb.
Okay, didn't see that coming. Huh.
Well, where's Elliot?
Gonna fill the water bags. Won't be long.
He's dead. Yes, stick your leg right by the water.
Stay here.
Oh, it ended there. Okay. All right then. Well. Oh. Well, I'm going to take a few minutes to gather my thoughts and get everything together, and I will see you all after the cut for the review portion of this video. Alright, and welcome back. It is time for the review portion of this video, covering the escape, the ambush, and the expedition. So, let's get right into it with my favorite parts of these episodes. Starting with just sort of some insight into the history of the Daleks, which was that the Daleks were once farmers and philosophers, whereas as the Thals, they are currently, well, they were farmers, you know, they're a very pacifist race, whereas the Daleks were once more along those means. Again, it's like they were farmers, they were philosophers. And just, again, based on what I personally have experienced of the Daleks, that's such a strange contrast to have, to think that the Daleks, the most evil race in the universe, or at least one of the most evil creatures in the universe, came from a line of overall peaceful beings. I just find that really intriguing overall. So yeah, that's my first favorite part here. My next was simply that when Susan was writing out the message, that when she, the Dalek said something and she laughed, they got mad over that. Like, they got mad at her laughing. They basically go, "Stop that, stop that." Something about that just really struck a chord with me. So yeah, because again, like previously, when Susan laughed, it was kind of surprising and seemingly out of nowhere, whereas this time, I don't remember the context just because I had to absorb all 3 episodes. But in that context, it was like, you know, it was kind of an appropriate laugh, and the Daleks got upset. So that was just really nice for me. I really enjoyed that element. My next favorite part was when the group well, they made a plan and they essentially put on a show for the Daleks. They put on a show to work out a way for them to reach that camera and pull it down and break it, essentially. I mean, obviously, as we learn, it doesn't really trick the Daleks, but they put on the show to at least make it seem like it was feasible. So yeah, I really like that aspect. And one thing that you'll probably find is a theme in a lot of my favorite parts coming up, and I think even so in the previous episodes, was how the group is starting to act more like a group. They're working together. Like, especially Barbara and Ian, mostly Ian, don't exactly agree and often butt heads with the Doctor. The fact that they are working together, they are working as a unit together, I'm really liking that. Which actually brings me to my next favorite part, when the group is brainstorming. Now, I know that at this point in the show, they were still in a phase where Doctor Who was meant as sort of an educational show, or to some degree, and really seeing them brainstorming and going over how, like, you know, the use of static electricity and how the Daleks moved and all that, I found that really intriguing. And while it may not exactly be the most educational of topics, I can see how by using the group in those sort of brainstorming sessions to figuring out a plan, how that can be effectively utilized for kids, especially at that time, to sort of absorb some of the information that they're giving out. So yeah, again, I really like that, and I found it intriguing, and again, a very a way I could enjoy seeing them sort of portraying the more educational elements that take place in the early part of the show here. Now, my next favorite part was honestly when they were tricking the Dalek, which was, I guess that was more the outcome of their brainstorming, but tricking the Dalek to coming in, getting the mud on it and all that. It was an interesting little sequence of events there, and it did lead to a section that I thought rather weird at first, but when they used the cloak and, you know, pull out the Dalek, I found it strange that we didn't actually see anything, which I know with the camera work they were limited on, like, what they could actually aim at, what they could do, so most likely they couldn't actually get a camera to aim into the armor of the Dalek. So I did like how they did the little reveal right at the end of the escape, and, you know, just sort of had the tentacles or the claw sort of coming out from under the cloak. I really enjoy that overall, so that was a really nice segment. My next favorite part was essentially the reveal that they are on Skaro, which, I mean, really that does make sense, since this is the first place we're seeing them. This is the first place where, well, we later find out that the Daleks essentially descended from the Thals, I guess, and they were another human race alongside the Thals. But there's sort of that confirmation that, yes, we are on Skaro. So this is actually the original origin planet of the Daleks. So yeah, I really liked how they did that. But moving on from there, my next favorite part was after they escaped, seeing the Doctor in high spirits, like seeing him interacting with that one woman who had the collection of their history, and he was very giddy. It was more of that personality of the Doctor coming out and getting to see him, you know, in his prime. He's seeing all these things and he's learning more and gathering all this information. So just seeing him in high spirits was a really fun part of this for me, because I know that for the most part at this phase of the show, the Doctor's not really the focus so far. He's one of many focuses. But when we do get those focus and we see him, you know, in high spirits, not just being a grumpy old man, I really do like that. And that brings me to my next favorite part of the episode, which kind of leaks into the next one. But Barbara being sassy as hell. Like, she is not having any of Ian's crap or anyone else's. She is just very... I mean, it's as simple as that, really. She's not having any of Ian's crap, and she... And this actually, again, brings me to my next favorite part, which is essentially the Doctor and Barbara kind of butting heads with Susan and Ian, and just having that, you know, face-off of ideas. Not so much on the part of Susan, but, you know, she does kind of side with Ian a bit more as far as, you know, whether the Thals should help them, whether they should force them or kind of trick them into fighting for them. Those kinds of things. But again, it sort of works with that whole seeing them work together as a group more, and, you know, in any group or any relationship, there's going to be some conflict at times. So seeing how all that worked out, I really enjoyed it. And again, it did play off more of, you know, Barbara taking side with the Doctor. And even though logically kind of Ian's side worked out, the Doctor and Barbara were not wrong. In fact, I agreed with them. It's if not for the fact that Ian had the liquid thing, I forget what it's called now, but if not for the fact that he had lost that, I would very much agree with them that they just needed to get off the planet. But obviously they couldn't, and they had to go back and face the Daleks, which is what we're clearly on the journey to. My next favorite part of these episodes was... I feel like this being a favorite part might come across a little bit vindictive or something like that. But when Ian gets I call it a smack, but essentially Ian gets a punch in the face, it's not because I don't like the character Ian. I do like him, but it was just... It was an interesting little course of events, because clearly Ian was provoking the Thals, primarily Alydon, I think is his name. I can't remember any of these people's names. But, I mean, he was provoking him, so I kind of expected him to get punched. But, it just, in the end, there was a little part of me that was just kind of like, you kind of deserve that, bro. You know, but again, it's like, hopefully that doesn't come off as me being really vindictive or anything. I do like the character of Ian. Just, you know, sometimes I do feel like he could use a little smack right in the face. But that brings me to my last favorite part of these episodes, and that was the Daleks' plans, and how it sort of brings about more of what I've come to expect from the Daleks, how they're willing to sacrifice an entire world, any possible other living being, for their own survival. And one of the Daleks, I'm very much paraphrasing here, but essentially they will form the world to suit their needs as opposed to rely... darn it, I can't remember exactly what he said, but essentially, wherever they live, wherever they are, whether it's on Skaro or elsewhere, they will form the world to suit their needs. And at the time, they require radiation, so their plan is to set off a new bomb, or a new neutrino, I think it was, bomb. And yeah, again, that just brings more about of the Daleks that I know and love. Just their plans to eradicate everything else so that they may live. So yeah, those are all my favorite parts. Some annoyances I did have. And this first one, it lessened over time. Actually, it lessened pretty quickly, but at first I felt like there was too much focus on the Thals. And really, as the episodes went on, I found that what my issue there was I felt like there was too much focus on them when the other characters weren't around. Once the Doctor, Barbara, Ian, and Susan were with the Thals, I actually started to enjoy them a bit more. I enjoy seeing these other characters interacting with our main cast. In that sense, I really do enjoy them. Even if some of the other discussions had taken place with at least one other person there, it probably would have been a bit different. But when we have these fairly drawn out scenes that are just, you know, the Thals, or in the case of the previous episodes, the cavemen, it doesn't work for me, because I'm sitting there, and yes, we do get some information about, like the fact that the Daleks were once farmers and philosophers. That was a nice little bit of information. But for the most part, it's just kind of like, I don't care about you. Or at least not right now. I don't really care. It's like, let's get back to the main cast. And then whenever they're with you, cool. That'll work. But, and I assume that's going to be something that's going to be happening more over time throughout the rest of the serials, particularly here in the classic era. But yeah, just for the most part, just don't care for the characters when there's too much of them outside of interacting with our main cast. So that was my first annoyance. My second was the elevator / the lift's sound effects. Like, it goes, it's, on one hand, there's just this very whiny, it almost sounds like a balloon losing air that just kind of kept increasing and increasing. And then there was another version of the lift sound effect that was around the time that I think it was Ian, Barbara, and Susan pushed a rock or a pillar into the shaft. And there was just this really, it wasn't as high pitched, it was more of a low tone, but the sound of that lift just, it was not even grating, it was just painful. The louder it got, I mean, it just about gave me a headache. So I'm glad it didn't happen a lot, but when it did, it was just really off-putting and made me want to mute the video that was playing. So hopefully, you know, that's not going to be a hugely common thing with too many sound effects that are just grating and painful to hear. But, you know, again, those are just my annoyances for these episodes. Now, my moment of terror, and this is again more of a personal thing, knowing the Daleks as I know them from the future in the series. And it's that when the group is essentially forced to confront the Daleks again. Again, just knowing what I know about the Daleks, knowing how ruthless and evil they are in the future, that is just such a horrifying concept to me. The idea that you have escaped the Daleks. You got away from one of the most evil and brutal species in the entire universe. And then you have to go back into their domain. Just for me, that is a terrifying concept. The Daleks as they are now, they don't at least seem as dangerous. They don't seem as horrible to face off against. But at the same time, that could very much change in these next couple of episodes, as we'll be finishing up the Daleks, the serial. But moving on from there, I do have a question regarding this episode, or I guess it was the escape and the ambush. But the leader of the Thals, I don't remember his name, but who plays him? Who plays him, and is he like a famous character? Because every time he was on screen, my mind kept going to, I've seen that face before, I've seen that face before, I've seen him in something else, but I have no idea what. So I may go to IMDb sometime after here and I'll include his name if I can find him, / if I can remember to do that. But if I don't actually do that, please do let me know in the comments below who this is and whether or not he is actually a famous actor, because again, there's just something about that face that jumped out to me. It's like, I've seen him before in something. I just don't know what. So there you go. Okay, so that's my question. My quote of the episode, it could get, or rather, quote of these 3 episodes, it could go to no other line than the first time a Dalek utters the word extermination. Not essentially exterminate, they're not just saying that yet, but the Dalek just says extermination then. And there's just something strangely magical about that line to me. Again, just how it was the first time that the mantra, whatever it is, of the Daleks was stated, or at least the early stages of it was let out. Extermination. What would one day become exterminate, exterminate. So yeah, that is my quote of the episodes. I'm sure there are plenty others, and there are actually some other lines that jumped out to me, but that was the line I had to go with really in the end, because of how much of a legacy that line has, that single line. So yeah, no theory for this going forward just yet. I may get into some theories as things go along, as we get into maybe some of the shorter episodes, or I may even try and concoct a bit of a theory at the end of this serial, just to see if I can come up with anything. But as for my overall feelings on this part of the Daleks serial, it was... I can definitely see how a lot of people might complain that this is slower paced. There were several segments that probably could have been trimmed to maybe make this serial a bit shorter. I guess I'll have more of an overall thought on that once I actually do finish the last 2 episodes. But as a whole, I continue to like this. I feel like the first one, The Dead Planet, is still my favorite overall as far as these episodes have gone. But these 3 in particular, I found them to be rather intriguing. They had some really cool segments, and again, there was a lot of additional building of the relationship with our main characters, and that's something I continue to enjoy and will most likely continue to enjoy as this show goes along. So as a whole, still am enjoying it. Again, just not as huge of a fan of any of these episodes as much as I was of The Dead Planet. But they're definitely overall big on the upsides, and I'm looking forward to getting into the last 2 parts of this serial and finishing the second serial of Doctor Who, The Daleks. So next time will be, again, part 3 with The Ordeal and The Rescue. And before I close completely here, again, as I've mentioned in other videos, if you are interested at all in becoming a patron, there's a link to the Patreon in the description down below and at the end of this video. And for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to my videos as soon as they are uploaded and become available. That can be anywhere from a day ahead of time to possibly a few weeks ahead of time, depending on the show. And it's not just the classic Doctor Who, it's the other series I'm covering, including Steven Universe, Once Upon a Time, as well as others that may be coming down the line. So again, if you're interested in that at all, please do go check it out. But until next time, everyone, I am Papa Kenn, and I will see you for the next episode of Discovering Classic Who, Part 3 of The Daleks. Alon Z!